Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're stepping into the sandals of a forensic military historian to analyze what can only be described as a complete tactical nightmare. I want you to imagine the greatest military power on Earth, a sprawling city of marble and iron, suddenly invaded by just 50 metal-clad strangers from the future. The year is 2026 for them, but for us, it's antiquity. How exactly did the invincible Roman Empire fall in a single night to these time-traveling warriors? Well, let's conduct a tactical postmortem on our empire's collapse.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to break down this cold, logical dissection of how Rome's defenses were dismantled across 5 phases: the tactical mismatch, infiltration and intelligence, breaking the pillars, orchestrating chaos, and finally, the fall of the emperor.
Starting with Part 1, the tactical mismatch, the impossible odds. 50 men. Pause and really think about that for a second. To any seasoned Roman general, 50 guys isn't an invading army. It's literally a rounding error. Yet this absurdly small squad stood against the very heart of the empire, a civilization fortified by tens of thousands of highly disciplined legionaries, elite Praetorian guards, and a deeply entrenched political machine.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the mismatch. From a Roman logistical perspective, these invaders were uniquely vulnerable. They had zero supply lines, no cavalry, no satellite support overhead, and absolutely no reinforcements coming. Every single bullet they spent was gone forever. On the flip side, you have the macro might of the Roman war machine, with fast, practically limitless resources. In this kind of siege, the modern soldiers had absolutely zero room for error.
Let's move to Part 2, infiltration and intelligence, bypassing the unbreakable walls.
Now you gotta remember, our Roman sentries were highly trained to spot massive dust clouds from marching armies, right? Not invisible ghosts. These invaders were consummate professionals. They didn't just attack on day one, they observed. After patiently mapping our guard changes from a high hill, they intercepted an isolated merchant convoy. They hid their futuristic gear deep in the cargo, threw on stolen clothes, and basically just rolled right through our supposedly impenetrable gates, using Rome's own bustling commerce completely against us.
Now, you might be wondering, why sneak in? Why not just show off the tech and negotiate? Well, the language barrier locks everything down. To the Romans, these soldiers were speaking some bizarre, barbaric tongue. Negotiation was instantly off the table, which forced the modern squad to pivot entirely to disguise and deception.
So once they're inside those walls, the squad immediately splits up. They memorize the street layouts. They figure out exactly when the crowds swell. They track the daily routes of high-ranking commanders and map out which neighborhoods turn into dead zones at night. Basically, they turn themselves into invisible ghosts, actively mapping the nervous system of the Roman Empire so they could sever it later. The big takeaway here? True asymmetric warfare isn't about brute force. It's about blinding the enemy's eyes and cutting their nerves.
All right, Part 3, breaking the 3 pillars, the strategy of collapse.
Now, what's really interesting here is that we Romans prided ourselves on order. The Roman legion wasn't just some chaotic mob swinging swords around. It was a highly disciplined, well-oiled machine operating under a very strict chain of command. A direct brute force shootout by 50 guys against our shield walls, that would have been immediate tactical suicide.
So the invaders make this brilliant tactical deduction. They realize that just assassinating the emperor isn't going to cut it. The Senate would just rally the legions and crush them out of pure revenge. To truly shatter Rome, they had to break 3 pillars simultaneously: our chain of command, our decision center, and our balance of fear. It had to be a total, flawless collapse, all executed in one single night. Otherwise, the empire adapts and they die. But they're human, right? A slip-up happens. One of them gets noticed. Maybe it was his gait or the strange fabric of his clothes, but it triggers Roman suspicion. Suddenly, shouting erupts. There's a chase through the narrow alleyways. As rumors of these strangers start spreading like wildfire, time instantly becomes their absolute worst enemy. Delay means locked gates. It means doubled checkpoints. The entire timeline shatters, forcing their hand. The invasion has to happen tonight.
Which brings us to Part 4, orchestrating urban chaos, the night of chaos.
The second the sun sets, this invisible web just springs into action. Massive distraction explosions, sounding like thunder without rain, light up the outskirts of the city. While our legionaries are frantically scrambling to respond, the operatives systematically assassinate Rome's smartest commanders. Chariots get caught in vehicle crossfires. Officers are dropping from silent snipers they never even heard. By the 3rd hour, they've engineered absolute panic around the Senate.
They weren't fighting the Roman army, they were forcing it to run blindly into the dark.
And the psychological warfare here is literally devastating. You've got our brave Roman soldiers moving purely by reflex, running toward the fires to help, but they completely lack direction because all their commanders are dead. Meanwhile, you look at the Senate aristocrats, men whose power relied entirely on money and politics, and they're in full panic mode. In their cowardice, they hoard the elite city guards just for their own personal security, which effectively strips the empire of any organized military response.
Finally, Part 5. The Fall of the Emperor, the Decapitation Strike.
So the crucial point here is the sheer overwhelming danger at the palace. Under normal conditions, the palace is guarded by about 500 elite warriors, but during a citywide crisis, that protocol triples to 1,500 highly trained praetorians. The invaders are now vastly outnumbered in a highly confined space. Surviving this breach was going to require absolutely flawless ammunition management.
And the breach itself? It was an absolute masterclass in ruthless efficiency. They push into the courtyard using a devastating combo of assault rifles and explosives. Whenever a Roman guard even twitched toward the alarm bell, an invisible sniper dropped him. Once inside the labyrinth of the palace, the invaders didn't wander around lost. Using infrared goggles, they actively scanned through our thick stone walls for heat signatures, tracking the largest cluster of body heat straight to the emperor's royal retinue. Our ancient walls offered literally no protection against this kind of sorcery.
Knowing the palace is breached, the most powerful man in the ancient world has to make a split-second decision. And as a historian analyzing this collapse, I can tell you it was a fatal one.
The emperor attempts to flee through a secret passage, totally believing it's his salvation. But against a modern tactical squad, a narrow, long corridor is perfect not for escaping, but for getting trapped. It acted as this flawless, claustrophobic choke point. The modern soldiers rush the corridor, and in mere seconds, the head of the empire is severed.
By utilizing tactical superiority, modern weaponry, and a brilliant strategy of chaotic disruption, 50 soldiers systematically dismantled an empire of millions. But I want to leave you with this deeply provocative question to chew on. We've just seen that 50 modern soldiers can absolutely break the Roman Empire in a single night. But once the sun rises over a completely leaderless, chaotic, and heavily armed city, can 50 men actually rule it? Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.